Hello and welcome to That British Homestead. Today, well, we've got quite a bit to do and hopefully we'll get enough done today. I did come down here yesterday, but Andrew, bless him, has actually had quite, he had his jabs done and he was not happy, he was not having it, so I ended up leaving and not doing very much at all because, you know, priorities and that. But I'll show you what I've done. Planting up the greenhouse with 7 of these eggplants. So most of these eggplants are Turkish orange eggplants. They're my absolute favourite eggplants. So fingers crossed we'll get a harvest on them. Everything this year, it just feels like it's really delayed. And I feel like I'm super behind. I don't know if you guys feel the same. But I feel like I'm just so behind this year. And I'm just about putting out my chilies. But to be fair, and my peppers, but to be fair, we still get loads of 9 round about here, so it's not, I feel like the weather's behind as well. It's like either really lovely weather or quite cool. I'm really hoping, fingers crossed, it's going to be quite a warm year this year, because I really could do with a load of peppers. I'm like completely out of peppers. Normally we chop them up and freeze them, so last year it wasn't really that effective at harvesting, morning sickness, etc. So we just focused on the things that I really wanted to harvest and put away. So this year, fingers crossed, I'm going to get a load of peppers. So I brought down quite a few peppers, and these are the peppers that we've grown in our tent, and all I've done is sort of brought them down in their little cups, plotting them out. Some of them were a little bit, look, this one's just got a manky leaf, so anything like that I'm just going to go ahead and take off. This one is California Wonder. I have California Wonder, Red King. This one is Sweet Pepper Lipstick, so it's a snack pepper. A few mystery peppers, which I don't actually have an idea what they are because we didn't label them. And Sweet Banana. I've watered these super well. So I've got a few in there. I think I've got 6 in there already. And I've saved a few for my mum as well. I think she has 2 or 3 pepper plants plus some chilies, because I start all of her starts up with her, for her even. So we're going to go ahead and put these in now. They're looking really good, aren't they? Small but good. They will rocket up as soon as they go in the ground. They just need to go in. So I need my scissors and I need my hoary knife. Everything this time of year is an absolute premium. Space in the actual garden itself is a premium. Pots, soil. Oh dear. Quite excited about getting these pots back, and then I'll be able to pot something else up. So I've watered them really well. It's really good root growth on there. And this bed is enriched with horse manure. So I'm just digging a little hole, just enough to incorporate the root bowl. I want some of the native soil to go over the top. Let's get a nice root growth, but not overly done. As I take a break from planting these peppers, I thought I'd answer one of your questions. Kerry at Dog and the Plot, she asked, what do you think the very root of your desire to grow food is? So this kind of goes back from when I was a child. I actually grew up in a household that grew and canned a lot of our own food, and basically my nan used to have this huge vegetable patch at the end of her garden, and my mum used to help out, you know, doing it with my dad's mum. And she used to can a lot of her own food, make her own pickles, made green salsa, etc. And that kind of like has always been like how I grew up. And as a child, I was just like, whatever, you know as kids do. Jasmine does the same to me as well. And basically, when I got older, I was doing my degree and I worked full time and I did my degree full time. So I was, flat out because it's what we had to do to be able to afford the house, etc. And when it got to my dissertation, it was just a bit too much. So me and my partner agreed that I could go ahead and drop out of work so that I could have a little time to do my dissertation, because it's really difficult. I did my degree in geology and environmental science. We saved up, etc. And I decided to go ahead and take, I think it was 2 months, or it might have been a month, I can't remember, off of work. I was so worried about the price of everything and food, etc., that I decided, okay, that year I was going to grow a garden to save money. So I did. That year, it was my first year gardening at my house, and I grew a load of vegetables, etc., to like make up for my lack of wages. And I grew, well, I didn't grow courgettes that year. I think I ended up growing them from plant because I couldn't get the seeds to germinate. I grew potatoes, I grew tomatoes, etc. And it was just like, from that moment on, I was just addicted to growing. So it's a very long time ago. And then after a couple of years, I started up the YouTube channel. But another thing that really kind of booted me into really wanting to grow more and more and more of my own food is that in, I think it was 2016, I think it was, I got diagnosed with a tumour in my throat. And I kind of like, when you start getting ill and you're worried and stuff, you want anything to make you better. And it feels better when you are like physically doing it yourself. So you're like looking into it and you feel like you're doing it. Even if it doesn't work, you just feel better about your health if you feel like you're taking an active role in it. So I decided to research my food, and I've always been a really good, big advocate of food is health. So I started looking in the foods I was eating, what I was doing, you know, my lifestyle, and I started getting more and more into the idea of eating organic food and eating properly. And you know, maybe I shouldn't be living off a kebab and chips. So I decided to go into that way of thinking and looking into whole foods. And the only way that really, realistically, we could afford it was to grow our own food. And I just got absolutely fascinated in it. Being someone who comes from a family who are very heavily in the sciences, so my mum's got a degree in science. Pretty much everybody in my family have gone into the science fields. So I was always quite deeply fascinated in science. I used to not watch cartoons when I was a kid. I used to watch David Attenborough. So it seems like a natural sort of fold that I would get into growing our own food. And I just find the actual process quite fascinating and challenging. I'm one of them people that I get bored really easily. So I like to continuously have something to like work upon and do. So I feel like they're the reasons really. Health. I grew up with this mindset. And also, there's a massive spider, and also that I like the challenge of growing my own food, storing my own food. How can I do this? How can I make this better? And I try to grow mostly without any fertilizer, so I only like use what I call solid fertilizers, so horse manure and like soil amendments instead of using artificial fertilizer. Which, it was funny because when I first started gardening, I was really heavily artificial fertilizer, I use slug pellets, I use sprays, etc. I feel like that's very natural, because when we think of gardening, we think of like industrial gardening where we spray everything with chemicals, and now I'm like the complete reverse, where I try as much as possible to not put chemicals on my food. So I think it's better for our health in the long run. So I feel like that was a really big push. After I had my thyroid removed, so I had a condition called hypoparathyroidism, which is basically my parathyroid glands were completely, utterly ruined. During my operation, it's something that happens because they're connected to the thyroid. It's actually quite hard to do a thyroidectomy without having the damage to these. So I ended up having to take calcium tablets. Now, the interesting thing is, if having this condition, is if you eat anything processed, like I could drink, say a fizzy drink. I love fizzy drinks. So if I drank a fizzy drink now and I ate something like, I don't know, processed bread or whatever, my calcium would drop and I'd get really ill. So now, with all of these conditions and everything that I'm struggling with, I ended up having to have a very unprocessed diet. And once again, an unprocessed diet is super expensive. And the easiest way and best way to do it is to go ahead and grow it yourselves. So that's why I kind of got into the whole growing
situation. I'm getting more and more into, as I get older, into herb and herbology, so like using herbs to heal oneself, etc. I find that very interesting at the moment. I'm not at all very good at it, but I'm like dipping my toe into that, so that's probably the next sort of thing that I'm going to be wheedling away at. What would you love to grow but you're in the UK? So things I'd love to be able to grow is all my tropical fruit. I love tropical fruits, so like bananas, mango. I love mangoes. That's probably my favourite fruit. Pineapples, we absolutely adore pineapples. I'd absolutely love to be able to grow those here in the UK. So that's what I would like to grow. Maybe one day, we never say never, but I don't think that I'll be growing those anytime soon.
The farmyard garden asks me, what's your least favourite tomato? So I've grown so many tomatoes. Me and Claire often talk about tomatoes. I grow a lot of tomatoes, as you can see. Is there a variety that I don't like very much? Yes there is. She later in another comment says about how it possibly be shop bought tomatoes, which is very, very true. Shop bought tomatoes are, in my humble opinion, not very nice, but there are, and I was thinking about this the other day, there's a tomato called Reese's. Reese's is a traveller's tomato. You actually break off the pieces and eat them separately, so they're like little segments, like an orange. I don't like them very much because each segment ripens at a different time, and I find that one of them splits and goes mouldy whilst the other one's green. Okay, I don't think that was too bad. I actually have some good garlic like this. I think that's quite a decent bulb, considering they were so affected by the rust. I also have some tinier ones, but I don't think it's too bad. There were some fatalities in my method, I'm not going to lie. But like 95% of them are really good. I'm going to take them home. I've given them a clean, so I'm taking them home, giving them, once over, and I'll store them to dry. I'm not going to put them in the greenhouse this year. You remember what happened last year. So as you can see, I don't know if you can see that there is completely, utterly just cooked, basically. So I'm going to do the same as I do every year. The good ones are going to be my seed garlic, and the not so good ones are going to be my eating garlic. So Ali at My Rusty Garden asks, if money was no object, would I buy a farm? The answer to that is
Depends on the type of farm. If it was like an industrial farm like the one behind me, probably not. I like Clarkson's farm and all of that sort of jazz, but my main interest is like micro gardening, like this sort of scale. So I wouldn't want to buy like a massive farm. However, if it was like a homestead or what we call them small holding, I'd be all of that. Even a farmstead, I'd be all over that. A little family farm, yep, like a few cows or a few pigs with a small garden and stuff, that would be fantastic. But I don't really want to get into industrial farming. Also, I think I couldn't afford it, but if money was no option, then I'd rather go towards that way. Sheep farming is quite interesting as well. They do in the Lake District, but it's interesting. I've also been to, because my profession's teaching, I went to a little farm years ago when I went and got my turkeys, and they were a farm that was for children with special needs, and they did farmyard animals and then they did cooking. So their kids would raise the animals and then they'd teach them how to cook with the animals. It was all rare breeds, and it kept the genetic material keep going so that these rare breeds wouldn't die out. Now that is something that I think is absolutely, like, I take my hats off to them. It's an amazing job. I would love to do that. I'd love to get into that sort of way of like teaching and stuff, because I just think I'm very passionate about it. So yes and no would be the answer to that, if that makes sense. But saying that, I'm a really big strong believer in making what you have now like give it a good decent go, or what I said like in my last video, make your waiting room into a classroom. So all of the skills that if I ever ended up in that position, I've kind of got them, or I'm working towards them. I tell you, weeding is still something that I struggle with. Oh, it's just, these docks are just awful. Docks, stinging nettles and bindweed, they're the things I grow the best. Talking of which, the Right Pear Plot, so that's Ali and Trisha at the Right Pear Plot, they ask, is there anything you can't grow? So I've brought you here to my courgette bed, and I'm the only person in the world who struggles with courgettes, and it isn't even because I can't grow them, it's because of like acts of God. So for example, a couple of years ago my sister fell into my courgette plants, and she did that cartoony thing where you just keep falling and falling and falling, and end up completely demolishing my entire area of courgettes. So that was just like a really weird thing. Jasmine's cut off the growing tip of my courgettes, so I have a really good courgette harvest like most people, but most years it doesn't work out for me, so that's a bit of a pain in the, bum. The other thing is carrots. You know what I'm like with carrots, okay? I'm like literally at the point now that I'm actually thinking about naming my carrot in the other bed. I might call him Barry the carrot, because I've only got one. I've sown thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of carrot seeds, and literally every like 1,500 that I sow, I only get like one. So I'd say that that's probably the worst thing that I'm actually, like, when it comes to growing. Yeah, like by far, easily. There's other things like it's really difficult to grow Chinese cabbage because everything likes it. So you have to net it and spray it and all of that sort of stuff. Like spray it with BT, which is a nematode that stops caterpillars being able to eat it. So that's a bit of a pain. But yeah, mostly I'm really good at growing bindweed, docks, and yeah, stinging nettles. Really, really good at that. It's a gift. So Down to Earth with Jim asks me, what is my biggest gardening flaw? And I have to say, it is very apparent. I'm terrible at organisation and packing things away and being tidy. I go to other like people's plots. I watch on YouTube, I go on Instagram, etc. And you see these beautiful plots, and they're like flawless and perfect and wonderful. And mine's just never going to be like that. So my biggest flaw, like what I can see in my own personality, is that I just don't have that eye for detail and that like love of like complete tidiness. I always think like, well, who cares? But I do think that's a big flaw that I am actually working on. It's just I'm not very good at working on it. That, and sometimes I look at something and go, I'll leave that for later and then never get down to it. That is probably my biggest flaw. That and putting things away. The amount of times I've lost my hori knife is ridiculous because I put it in places and then I never can find it again. So I'm getting to the point where I am putting things in the greenhouse for safekeeping, which I never used to do. I used to do my free range tools, and if you look around my plot you can see that some of them are still free ranging, as you can see over there. And now you're probably thinking, but she probably doesn't have anywhere to put her tools. She does. She's just lazy. So that's a big flaw that I have in my personality, and I'm like that everywhere. I'm like that at home. My house is cluttery, I would say. Where things are just on display, as you've seen from my kitchen. I just have loads of things on the side because I'm like, well, I'm going to use them in like the next 5 days, so I might as well just leave it on the side. And that is something that irritates my partner so much and irritates me sometimes too. But I would like to get to the stage where I'm just a little bit less weedy, to be honest. I don't really care if I'm not Instagrammy perfect, because that's not reality of gardening, is it? And I'm sure that most of you watching this have perfect gardens, but it's not the reality of my garden. As you can see, I'm very, very good at growing gardening. If it wasn't for the perennial weeds, it wouldn't be so bad. But the perennial weeds here are just, if that's like a sound that makes sense. I've only been here for a few years now, like 3 years, and it's getting there. It's a lot better. I look back through videos and stuff to cheer myself up, and it is a lot better. The weeds used to be up here, and now they're only to here. So that's a lot better, but still not perfect. I know that.
So today I thought that I would show you the process of making some rhubarb leather. I have a ridiculous amount of rhubarb here. 36 cups of rhubarb that I've put into there, and I have put 1 cup of sugar for every 4 cups of rhubarb, and for every 4 cups of rhubarb I've put 1 tablespoon, it's more of a soup spoon, of lemon juice. In that warm up and defrost, because this was all frozen. See little bits of frost still on it. And I'll give it a stir. Cook this down for 10 minutes just to like denature all of those enzymes, because that's what keeps the lovely colour bright. Sadly or happily, I have an interesting combination of rhubarb plants, and they are green or red. Okay, so I have ones called Livingstone. They're actually my favourite ones. Livingstones are the really dark red ones, and they keep their colour. They're really pretty. You can see that they're almost red all the way through, just there. But I also have ones called Victoria, I think it is, which is the green with the little splodges of red on them. So it makes a interesting combination. I'm just hoping that this doesn't go grey, but this is all going to be fruit leather, which is exciting. The start of rhubarb season, and I have a few more kilos in the freezer that I've just kind of thrown in there because I was like, oh, what am I going to do with this? And I might make that into rhubarb wine. So let me know if you'd like to see a recipe for that. I went outside and did some gardening, so that's what it looks like now. You see it's starting to simmer. I'm going to go ahead and put this in the, well, I'm going to put the, okay, so I've blended that all the way through. I've kept the blender head out just in case I need to blend it a little bit more, because it's a little bit difficult to do, because obviously you've got a liquid moving around. You might get little bits. So what I'm going to do, what I have done, is I've taken these baking parchment and I've lined my dehumidifier with them. I believe you can buy them already done, but this is what I've done. I did read that you're meant to get them wet so that it stops it from wrinkling, but the water's just beading off of this, so I'm not going to bother. Or maybe I'll use this one as a test and see how it works. I've done that for all 5 of them like this, and I'm just going to go ahead and ladle it in. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. I've never done this before, so it's probably going to be a bit of a disaster. So I haven't taken out the water on here, and I was a little bit nervous about that. I did think to myself, oh goodness, that's going to be like a massive, like it was going to go everywhere, but it's turned into a bit of a paste, as you can see. So it doesn't look too bad. I don't want it too thick, So I'm going to put that much on. I can always put more on once that's done. So I'm just going to use the back of a spoon just to edge it right into the edges. So I want to make sure that I use as little of these dehumidifier trays as possible, because it's going to take a long while to get this done. Now, if I was going to cut these again, and I should have done one as a tester and then sort of gone ahead and cut the rest, but I didn't. And if I did it again, I would have just left a little bit of an edging around the sides and around the mouth of this hole, so that you can get it right up into the edges. But you live and you learn, don't you? You live and you learn. So I want it to be pretty much even, so you're just kind of smushing it around. And I'm going to show you how to do it if you don't have a dehumidifier as well. It's like an even layer. Doesn't look too bad. Next! You're right, Bailey, I didn't call you. He's like, my name's Next. I should have moved that spoon. I think. Next I'm going to line this with baking parchment, but I'm going to actually line that with baking parchment. I'm going to make sure it has an overlap. I'm going to cut off the excess, and I know it's terribly wasteful, but we can use that for something else. I'm going to go ahead and dollop some of this in there. We don't want it too thick. Now I'm going to put this in the oven on its lowest possible setting. I'll put it on fan oven, and the lowest mine goes is 30, but I'm going to put it on at 60. And it's going to take quite a few hours to go ahead and do. So you can go ahead and add as much sugar as you like to this. It's not being preserved by sugar. And also, which I thought was quite nice, you can go ahead and add 1 cup of strawberries to every 3 cups of this rhubarb mix. So that does make it quite, you know, different and interesting. Unlike when you get fruit roundups from the shop, they're absolutely filled with chemicals and they don't have very much fruit in them at all. So this does make it a lot more sort of customizable. There's not really any fruit that you can't do this with. So I know this is a vegetable, but you know what I mean. So gooseberry would be another one that you kind of get tons of gooseberries. That's quite nice. I'm going to probably do this with black currants as well, just because my daughter absolutely loves fruit roundups, and therefore she eats a lot of them. It's a good way to use up a lot of fruit that you kind of have around. I'm going to do some with the strawberries as well, because we get so many strawberries. I'm just going to dump that in. These sheet pans that come with the oven is very, very good to do this on. That's all it looks like, so as even as I can. Right, I'm going to take these into the dehumidifier, and I'm going to go and put them on 60 until they're touch dry, and I'll show you what that looks like. This is touch dry, where it's not sticky.
What we do here, we can get in the middle.
Just cut it, doesn't matter how you do it.
I think it's so weird. Can I try?
You can try.
Is it right if you just move your butt over? Woo!
He's a bit short on the old.
Did you go round twice or just the once?
Twice.
You don't need to go round twice.
Oh, we've got a bit longer then, haven't we?
Yeah. That's what I asked.
So Rach from our allotment plot asks, who taught you how to preserve and can? What was the first thing that you did? So I already talked about my nan, and my nan, she did do some preserving, but she did what we call potting. So she would cook something up like green chutney, and then she'd put it into glass jars that were clean and close them. That, for me, is like the traditional way of British canning. So I learned all my canning from YouTube. I actually learned everything from watching all different types of YouTubers in the US, and learning how to pressure can, how to water bath, how to do this. I also bought Ball's Book of Canning, which I used. So I get loads of my recipes from like La Parfait, but mostly I go ahead and make up my own recipes because I'm a rebel. And you know, well, I've learned things along the way, like don't put red wine in canned tomatoes because it tastes like vinegar, because it oxidizes. I've learned don't put sage in any canned product because it tastes like mould after you've canned it. So it's like one of these things that first, like you learn these things, but it's trial and error. First thing I did when I bought my canner, because I got a pressure canner years and years ago, back when they were super expensive, don't tell Bob, and basically I canned everything. I canned mincemeat, I canned chicken, I canned literally everything. I pressure canned everything. They do say though the first thing you should learn to can is water, because obviously you're not wasting anything there. And I invested in a load of jars and all the equipment and stuff, and now I kind of like got to the point where I'm comfortable doing it quite routinely because I've been doing it for a few years now. We are at the point where all of our tomato sauce is completely made from what we produce, which is really good. I'm hoping to do all our own ketchup, all of our barbecue sauce, etc. this year. So, and we also make all of our own mayonnaise, but that doesn't get canned, of course. But this is like a slow thing that we do. We started off with tomato sauces, and then we made a sweet chili sauce, which I make all from scratch, and it's all like homegrown stuff. And I make that, like all of our sweet chili sauce is made by me, and I can it. I just add a little bit of cornstarch in it later. And now I've kind of started branching out into sweet things. I've always made jam. Jam's quite easy for me now. Because of course, the first time you do it, you're like, oh, it's so stressful. I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to do the other. And it's really like intense. But after a while, you're like, actually, this is not too bad. So I canned a load of strawberry pie filling the other day. It was really stressful. I've never done it before. I've done strawberry jam, like literally did it on autopilot. So that wasn't too bad. Even the fruit roll-ups now, I've done them a few times. It's kind of like quite easy for me to do. All I have to do is make sure that I know that they're dry to the touch, add the lemon in it, and it's fine. I have to say, when I first started canning, I was like super worried about like eating the stuff I've canned, because I was worried that, you know, it would like, you know, poison me or something. But now I'm just super confident in eating it because I've eaten it for so many years and I know that there's no ill effect. The last question I asked Jasmine, what she wanted to ask, and she actually asked the same question as Kerry, and I was like, oh, someone's already asked that, Jazz. She said, why did I start YouTube? And I honestly, and the reason I started YouTube 4 years ago now, isn't that madness? And I can't believe that I've got up to 2,000 subscribers. I'm always eternally grateful. It just blows my mind. Sometimes, like, when you get to 100 people, you're like, I can imagine that number. But 2,000 is, like, at my limit of being able to imagine in my head. Anyway, to answer Jasmine's question, was that in my real life, I don't really have very many people that are interested in growing, especially back then when I started. Most people I knew thought that
growing your own food was a complete utter waste of time. Sadly, my nan passed away, so I didn't have her anymore. My mum wasn't growing then. I didn't have really any friends that were growing, and I wanted a community around me so I could talk about how cool a tomato was without people like rolling their eyes and thinking, what you want about? Hello. So that's why I got into the YouTube. What's the matter? So, Julie Glad says, I hope I'm saying your name right. I want to try canning, but I'm a bit nervous. I was exactly the same when I started. I've done jam before, but not boiling it in the jar. What are the difference between the types of preservation? Can you do a show and tell or some recipes, please? Yes, I can. So, you've got dehydration. Dehydration is what we did here with our fruit roll-ups. It's also what I do with my herbs. So this is a load of herbs that I picked down the allotment. I just chuck them on the dehumidifier. I do that at just below 40 to prevent so that the colour stays. And also I did something similar with my dried beans. They're just air dried on the counter. So that's probably the simplest one. The other one that you can do is freezing. Super easy. Some people say that you should go ahead and put things in boiling water for a couple of minutes, and you can Google that to find out how many minutes per whatever you're doing, and then freeze it. I don't bother doing that. I just go ahead and chop it up, put it on like a sheet tray, put it into the large freezer, and then I bag it up into these freezer bags that I get from Costco. And then I have a stock of it, and I just go ahead and write the name of it so they don't get stuck together, because if I put them straight in the bag they get stuck together. Then you have water bathing, which is probably the next easiest one. Water bathing's anything that's high acidic food. So for example, you've got tomato sauces, you've got anything with like a lot of vinegar in it, like the sweet chili sauce that I make has a lot of vinegar in it, so therefore it doesn't really need a lot of high pressure to can it, because it is got that acidity to it. What you kind of want to do is make it so acidic that bacteria can't grow. Same as what we do in jam. Jam is just so that all the moisture's locked out, because it's all the sugar's been used to preserve it. And as you're doing potting or not boiling the jars, it's like the traditional way of doing it. It doesn't really need to be water bath, because it doesn't have the lower amount of sugar like they use in America. Over here in the UK we use quite a lot of sugar, about 50-50 ratio. A little splash of either vinegar or lemon juice will go ahead and preserve that perfectly. That is the next easiest one. The next one I did was, say, pressure canning. Pressure canning is like a whole thing with a huge pressure canner. Lots of people here in the UK are quite intimidated by it because we didn't grow up doing it or seeing it, but it's like a pressure cooker. Okay, I'm not saying you can use a pressure cooker to can anything, because you cannot, but it's similar the way I think of it anyway. So that's the things like I do baked beans in there, I do meat, I do sweet corn. Anything that's low acidity food I will go ahead and pressure can. I do pressure can some of my tomato sauces as well, because the balance of tomatoes via anything else is not correct, and I like to put meat stock in there as well, which you cannot water bath can. The next thing, which I think most people find quite intimidating, is fermented food. I love fermented food. So these are my fermented lemons that I did the other day. So I use this all the time. Anything you use lemon in, you can go ahead and use this in. I actually made a batch of my fermented mayonnaise with the juice of this in. So that is something that I'll use really well. So that's fermenting away, and I just leave it. As long as you have a weight on top and it's pushed below the surface of the water, it's absolutely fine. Any mould is a bad sign. Okay, yeast is fine, cloudiness is fine, it's just mould that you don't want. This is my sauerkraut. This sauerkraut is about a year old. It is
something that we just eat off of. So this was full. I think it had about 2 cabbages in there. And I just pushed it down. I will do a video later how to make this stuff. I'll probably pick one thing and put it in the end of a video for a few videos time, just so that it's a little bit mixed around. But this is a very easy way to preserve things as well. And I know we don't want to preserve this, but another fermentation that I really enjoy is my sourdough. So this sourdough, I can't even remember when I made it. It's a couple of years now that I've had this sourdough, and I just leave it on the side. I feed it every day. As you can see, it's like bubbly and lovely in there. And I feed it normally at night time. If I don't use it, I use it most days. So that's something else that's really good that's fermented. One more thing that you can do is pickling. So these are pickled cucumbers, as you can see. They're dill pickles, a sweet dill pickle that's I think it was last year I did that. And I think I water bath canned these, if I remember correctly. So they do go a little bit soft like that. You can do refrigerated pickles where you just keep it in the refrigerator and eat over 2 weeks. So I've been eating on this one a bit. But this is my pickled beetroots. It's absolutely lovely colour. I made that last autumn, I think it is, with some beetroots that I grew. And then this is pickled horseradish as well. So you can pretty much pickle anything. I just do like a normal pickle, normally sweet pickle. I don't think this one's sweet that I remember, but I use that in like medicinal cough medicine. So it's like something that I always have on hand. But these pickles, I just go ahead and I water bath them for so many minutes. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it's 20 or maybe 15. Put it in there, boil them, take them out, and then they'll vac seal with these lids. And then I store them in my garage until I use them, and then as soon as I open them I store them in the fridge. This pickle brine though is so nice. I actually use it in salad dressings and stuff because it's really sweet and lovely. And this has got such a gorgeous colour to it. You've got easy things like this strawberry jam. Obviously we've been eating on this as well. I don't really have anything up the house that isn't super easy to grab. So this has been open for a little while and you can see absolutely perfectly fine. I like to do them in smaller jars than this because I don't have them open that long, but this, I've never had an issue with my jam. It's open ages before I get any mould or anything like that. But once again, I just throw them away if I see any mould, but I try to get through them as much as possible. Normally I do the 350 millilitres of jam in one go, but I'm trying to get rid of the big jars because I use those for pressure canning, so I don't want them to be sitting with jam in them. So we're eating those ones first. But like I said, there's tons of different ways of doing it. There's no right way of preserving anything. It's as long as it's preserving. Ultimately, the easiest way to preserve anything is curing, which what we're doing with the garlic, and we're just leaving it to dry out. You do that with potatoes, garlic, and winter squashes. So that is like the ultimate way to do it. Because it's the most easy and natural, and you just leave it in on the side and it's okay. You can do that a little bit with cabbages, but they don't last as long. So the outer leaves start going a little bit grim, and then as you go through they get worse and worse and worse. So it's something to bear in mind. Fermenting is something that you kind of have to get used to, and it was quite a challenge for me to be comfortable eating fermented food, but it's so good for your microbiome. So I do this, I've got the sauerkraut. We also ferment a lot of alcohol, so you can also preserve things in alcohol. And I showed you my vodka the other day. This is vanilla extract that I made. It is just, you can use any alcohol, it's super simple. It's literally just any alcohol, spirit alcohol. So I think this was bourbon, because I had some lying about from making Jack Daniel's sauce. And I went ahead and just chopped up some vanilla beans. You can just see them in there, and I topped it up the jar with bourbon. Okay, and then the longer you leave this, the better. And I'm telling you, this stuff is outstanding and so much cheaper than the one that you can buy. I'm never ever going to buy it again. There's a few things now that I've made myself which is never ever going to buy. There's also storing in oil. I'm not 100% confident with storing in oil, but from my experience so far, you have to really dry the stuff that you store in oil, so it makes me a little bit worried because I'm not that great at doing that yet. It's something that I'm going to be going ahead and getting more comfortable with. However, one thing I'm very, very comfortable with is fermented mayonnaise, which is how I store eggs basically. It is so simple to do. This is something I made today, as you can see, and it's just literally olive oil, egg yolks, some whole grain mustard, and some of the fermented lemon juice. So it was super easy to make, and if you put something that's fermented in it, it stores for much longer. So I always make sure that I either put some of the sauerkraut juice in there, or I put the fermented lemon. But I like the idea that I'm already using something that like needs to be in there, so I don't add like a random other ingredient. So I quite like that. The key to mayonnaise, of course, is everything needs to be room temperature. Even if it's just a splash, no, it really matters. It won't thicken up. So that's something that I find quite a really good use of eggs. Last but not least, the beginner gardener asks you anything. Okay then, who's your favourite Ninja Turtle? Galileo, I think he's a Ninja Turtle. My brother watched it, so I didn't like watch it too much as a kid. Power Ranger, I never watched it, but it would have to be the pink one, obviously. And Chipmunk would have to be Alvin. My daughter loves Alvin and the Chipmunks, so it was like a blast of the past her watching that. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you like content like this, please consider subscribing, and I will see you next time. Bye bye. Oh, and if you've got any ideas of any recipes or anything like that that you'd like to see, go ahead and stick it down below, and you never know, I might be adding that into the future video. Right, I'll see you next time. Bye bye.
Hello and welcome to That British Homestead. Today, well, we've got quite a bit to do. And hopefully, so as you can see, I've planted up. Don't even know what I was doing there. So as you can see, he's not happy. You're not happy? Your hat looks so great. He's not a fan of hats.